Hello, everyone. My name is Joe Bartle. I'm going over the 7 players you need to trade right now in your Dynasty League. I'm doing this exercise from a Dynasty perspective, and I think there's varying degrees to desperation. It's probably the best word to use, that you have to move on with these people. The idea is if you're going to trade player A today, in 6 months, will that player then have a significantly less or worse value? If the answer is yes, and I want you to play this along at home too for other players in your leagues, then you need to make the move right now. I understand YouTube comment section, like anyone can get hurt, but besides that caveat, if the idea is this player to trade today will have more value than in 6 months, we have to start trying to take advantage of these situations. I am dreadfully terrified of repeating the Anthony Richardson mistake of last year, where you could have gotten a king's ransom for him, and that's no longer on the table. So without further ado, let's go through a few of these players. Again, 7 players that I think qualify for players you have to trade right now. Now, I want to make sure everyone understands the premise, at least from my perspective. I believe this upcoming rookie running back class is going to be generational. It's something I've been saying on many of our SiriusXM shows throughout January and February. It seems to have been proven true by the combine results as well. I think everyone, if you've listened to any Dynasty podcast over the past week and a half, discussed how great this running back class is. I would not be surprised at all if there's at least 12 guys drafted within the first 3 rounds. And if you want to extend into the 4th round where there still is draft capital that matters, let's just say 14, 15 different names. That amount of running backs, that amount of that amount of running backs shuffling through is automatically going to churn up the bottom of depth charts. So you think of like Trey Sermon or Miles Sanders or Dameon Pierce, Roschon Johnson, those guys, if you can get anything for them, anything at all, I'd be happy to move them right now, because in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, when the draft turns around, you have teams signing all these free agents. Those will be players that you can get off waivers at any point. Make any of those moves right now. Obviously, in Dynasty Leagues, you're probably not going to be able to trade some of these bad players. Is that the politically YouTube correct way of saying it? So let's extend this a bit further. And again, the idea being in 6 months, when training camp turns around, is the player that we're discussing now going to have worse value than right at this moment? The same goes for a guy like Rachaad White, who got immediately feels like replaced by Bucky Irving this season. And then there was the quotes that we saw from Matthew Berry's Combine article. I encourage you guys to check that out on the NBC Sports site right now, that said Sean Tucker was also something the Buccaneers valued a lot and wanted to get him more touches. In fact, the article said, if not for Bucky Irving, Sean Tucker would be the starting running back for the Buccaneers. Again, no mention of Rachaad White in that equation, and it's possible, given Rachaad White's background as a pass-catching back and proven at the NFL level, he might have more utility for NFL teams. Think Antonio Gibson for the Patriots last year, and he could get moved by the Buccaneers. I will gladly take whatever draft capital I can get. If I can make Rachaad White liquid into a draft pick, I'm going to do so. So again, Rico Dowdle's a 3rd-round pick. Rachaad White, maybe even a little bit less than that. I'm gladly taking that sort of deal. The second tier of players I've got to review, again, under the premise that in 6 months, their value will be less, is a lot of these veteran guys. I don't know if anyone saw the quote or if it got buried in all the news that's happened over the past week, but GM of the Ravens, Eric DeCosta, had mentioned Mark Andrews, and this is quote by quote here, Mark Andrews is going to go down as one of the great players, and he's going to be a Ravens Ring of Honor player someday. A lot of past tense sort of verbiage, or at least looking towards the end of Mark Andrews' career. And I'm not sure people really recognize that. Now, Andrews has a $16.9 million cap hit. The cap obviously went up. We've discussed that plenty on different videos that you probably see out there right now on YouTube. It's a pretty high price to pay for Mark Andrews, who I think kindly, it would be the way to put it, botched the playoff game, lost to the Bills, and has had some not so great playoff moments in the past years. And they also have Isaiah Likely, who really stepped out this past season. It wouldn't be surprising at all for Mark Andrews to be released. And in that instance, if he were to go to the Commanders, in place of Zach Ertz, that'd be awesome. Or if he went to the Chargers over Will Dissly and had Mark Andrews be that same player, great. I don't want to be caught holding the bag on what that opportunity cost might look like. If the Ravens were to cut Mark Andrews and he goes to 26 other different teams, he has worse or lower fantasy value than he currently has now. And to be fair, it's not a whole lot of fantasy value for a near 30-year-old tight end who already wasn't a premium athlete and isn't utilized all that much in the Ravens offense. So if I were to get maybe even a mid to late 2nd round pick for Mark Andrews with the idea somebody else wants to buy the last year of a top 10 tight end in the Ravens offense, fine. I'm going to do it. I want to be liquid with these players that I'm concerned will lose their value in recent weeks. It's why you need to trade for them now. The other player, and I want to be clear, I got burned on this year because I was already trading away James Conner when the Cardinals drafted Trey Benson. But James Conner has only played 15 or more games twice in his 8-year career. Yes, he did it last year. He finished week 18 on IR. Well, that doesn't really matter. It's only the second time, again, just to repeat, only the second time in 8 years James Conner has played 13 or more football games. He's awesome when he's out there, but the Cardinals offense wasn't all that good. Drew Petzing, please do something else with Marvin Harrison. That'll help. And I think Trey Benson is a really quality backup, and we're adding upwards of 14 new rookie running backs as well. It's not going to be the Cardinals necessarily drafting somebody, but if you are one of these 14 teams that draft a rookie running back, there's going to be people cut into the market. Therefore, the Cardinals can add one. Their bottom of the depth chart churns as well too. And it's just another reason why I would try to move off of James Conner. If I can get him for a late second, if I could trade James Conner for a late second, I would happily do so. And I'm also fine buying Trey Benson to a certain degree with the idea that the Cardinals, who just re-signed James Conner to a long-term deal a couple weeks ago, who just re-signed James Conner to a long-term deal back in December, that might be the catalyst to make a deal happen for a team in your Dynasty League that wants to win right now. Hey, please hit the like button on this video. It obviously goes a long way towards us promoting more of our NFL content, and we are doing NFL Dynasty content daily on the RotoWire Fantasy Football YouTube network. And all right, moving over to some of the more controversial players that I think, again, need to be traded today. I promise I don't normally view players as stocks per se, but if you are a frequent listener of any of our shows over the past, 2 years now, you probably have a lot of shares of Chase Brown and or Tryone Tracey. Brown is going to be the more expensive of the two players, at least in terms of acquiring. I think the situations, though, are pretty similar. Brown had over 600 carries over the course of his college career with Illinois for 3 years, and he quickly proved that he could shoulder the load as a main ball carrier for the Bengals when Zach Moss went down with injury this season. I think it's really curious the Bengals chose to sign Zach Moss to begin with. That wasn't a whole lot of money, but then they doubled down and traded for Khalil Herbert, who promptly fumbled away his only opportunity and gave Chase Brown really the end of season run that's getting his value so high. If the Bengals are the team that's telling us not once, but twice that they think Chase Brown needs to have a complement, or if something else, just a backup of quality nature, then that should be telling to you entering this draft. Draft class, which is generational, in my opinion, at the running back position. The Bengals have a ton of needs on defense, probably a few on offense as well. They might not be able to invest a round 2 or round 3 pick on a running back, but there is going to be either a veteran added to complement Chase Brown, or a draft pick quality of nature, or a draft pick in the 4th round or later that I think can equally do what Chase Brown does. So right now, Chase Brown is valued on keep trade cut as a late 1st round pick. I'll be considering, and again, I mentioned Tryone Tracey. I think, again, they circle together. Tryone Tracey, unlike Chase Brown, was the default back for the Giants by default. The Devin Singletary got injured, but there really wasn't anything else in that backfield. The Giants didn't try to add to it because Joe Shane, we saw it on HBO, didn't really care to invest in the running back position all that much, and it certainly hurt him a lot. If the Giants were to invest a round 2 or round 3 pick in a running back, it wouldn't be surprising. In fact, it might be a way for Joe Shane to kind of cover his tail a little bit after the Saquon Barkley debacle that we saw this past offseason. Tryone Tracey was supposed to be a converted receiver. Tryone Tracey was a converted college receiver and really wasn't utilized in the passing game at all for the Giants. I'm not saying the Giants are going to draft this type of running back, but in this draft class, you can kind of pick whatever archetype of back you want. So if the Giants were to draft a Caleb Johnson bruiser type of archetype, a bruiser archetype of running back to complement Tryone Tracey, that's a scenario for a guy that's right now in the mid to early 2nd round territory on keep trade cut to have his value fall further. I'm not trading Tracey for a mid 2nd round pick. I want to be clear. And I'm not sure I'm trading Chase Brown for a late 1st either. But if I could package something, maybe one of those 3rd rounders that we just acquired for all of our veteran guys and Chase Brown and Tryone Tracey to move up into the top 6 or top 8, that's objectively the right way to go if we're viewing them as assets who've gained significant value since we acquired. All right, finally, I'm going to tell you right now, the last player I'm going to recommend is going to trigger people. There's a long-standing proof that I do not like this player, and on multiple videos, I have said I didn't want any value, whether it be redraft or dynasty. I've been proven wrong again and again and again. If you want to accuse me of being biased, I completely understand. I have led you astray far too often. But if you're going to say, I'm going to trade a player right now at his peak value, I'm going to avoid the Anthony Richardson scenario from a couple of years ago, then the answer is Devon Achane. That should be the immediate answer that comes to everyone's brain. Achane right now, at least on Keep Trade Cut, is being valued as a top 5 dynasty running back. Top 5 dynasty running back. After effectively a year and a half of being a very, very good fantasy player. I know he's super fast. He's agile. He's fun to watch on all those advanced metric things that we see on ESPN nowadays. And somebody probably drafted him in the second round and got crazy value for him, and they love him. You're going to find X, Y, and Z reason that your league mate will not want to move Achane for a price, or more importantly, why you might not want to move Achane for a certain price. I totally get it. I understand. Objectively, though, if we are playing out the idea we need to move this player before their value falls, I think Achane has to be the answer. The Dolphins' offense was not good last season. You can say, Joe, yep, Tua was out for X amount of games, and that's why the Dolphins' offense wasn't great. Completely understand. It was really bad with Huntley and whatever scrubs else they had at backup. Completely get where you're coming from. But if you are the Dolphins, and more importantly, if you are Mike McDaniel, who's supposed to be this offensive genius, you can't have your offense be middle to low in terms of passing yards per game, or even worse with running yards per game. This is supposed to be one of the best offenses in the league. They have all this talent, and yet we're not seeing it function that same way. Achane, with all the volume and great volume that he got last year, did not help the Dolphins win games, did not make Mike McDaniel look better. So if I'm Mike McDaniel, this offensive genius, I could just rest on my laurels, keep using all these speed guys, use Jalen Waddle ineffectively, have Jonnu Smith again get 100-plus catches, and maybe finish around 500, see if I can make the playoffs. Or maybe there's a curveball to what Mike McDaniel would want to do offensively, and I have to imagine he's identified, and the general manager has identified. I have to imagine Mike McDaniel has identified they need to have a bit more of a bruising archetype at running back. To be clear, Achane's really good. He will be the starter for that team, but I don't think there's a scenario where he's getting 75 catches and also getting at 200 carries, unless the Dolphins just are fine losing football games, because that's what they were doing this past year. In the event that they draft a bruiser, again, we could say Caleb Johnson just for argument's sake, but whatever you like, one of your favorite power backs in this draft class, which has an immense amount of all different characters of running backs. If the Dolphins were to add to that or get a veteran to complement Devon Achane, that's a scenario where a guy that's now being currently viewed as a top 5 overall running back fantasy asset could plummet a little bit further. I don't think you can get Devon Achane for the 1-1 overall, which I'd assume is Ashton Genty. But if I could trade Achane and something for Genty, I'm probably going to do so. And yeah, we're betting a lot on Genty going to the right spot, but I'm more comfortable knowing that Genty, who has proven in college he can be a workhorse, has the body type and explosiveness to be an every down back, and sure seems generational the same way that Ezekiel Elliott was and Saquon Barkley was. I feel more comfortable knowing that and what that looks like in the NFL than I do Devon Achane.